Good day everyone, it's Londononion here back with another discussion on the medic and an accompanying subarchetype as a solo artist. As usual, I'll be speaking on the efficacy of this pairing with the assumption of playing on the Apocalypse difficulty. My general philosophy being that what works on higher difficulties will usually work on lower ones, and with greater leeway/room for user error. Of course, given the replayability, different items to collect, and classes to unlock, there is a good chance that I will revisit this class and subarchetype pairing in the future. Now forgive me on this one, I'm a little under the weather, so my lovely voice might not be up to standard, but the show must go on. In our previous discussion, I relayed my preferred build for the medic and the summoner as the subarchetype. In this video, we'll continue our discussion with the regenerator peacemaker. So the peacemaker side of this pairing is the gunslinger. Similar to our previous video, I'll simply refer to this pairing as the peacemaker. The gunslinger is oriented toward high interval round expenditure, seamless reloading, and an edge toward ammo conservation. Now, as we had touched on in our previous video, the medic naturally struggles with offense and issuing out significant damage. Additionally, the medic does not seem predisposed to excelling with any particular weapon class, though one can make logical conclusions on optimal choices. The gunslinger acts as more of a compensatory subarchetype. The gunslinger's skills and perks are mainly oriented towards speed in the realm of fire rate and reload speed. With this in mind though, the gunslinger will not offer much in direct damage buffs outside of the swift shot perk, but this is well compensated for in nimbler rate of fire. Any firearm in the hands of the gunslinger will fire and reload significantly faster. Referring back to our medic overview, dealing with mobs of enemies may prove to be a challenge since the medic's main answer to virtually every obstacle is to recover. The gunslinger seems to be made for dealing with multiple enemies, given their swift handling of firearms as well as their core trait, ammo reserves, which increases reserve ammo by 50%. Now there isn't much of an easy relation between the gunslinger and the medic core traits, as the medic trait, triage, increases healing effectiveness by 50%. To help begin the connection of these two, we'll first speak on the preferred weapon loadout. I would say that weapon choice is integral to the success of this pairing, though a small constituent to the framework behind this build. Between elites and mobs of basic enemies, I would argue that mobs are far more dangerous for the medic, and this is mainly what the gunslinger is meant to address with their superior weapon handling. The medic already comes with the bonesaw machine gun, and I would think this is rather appropriate for defending against a mob of enemies. On its own, the fire rate is lackluster, but with gunslinger, it serves as a potent repellent to converging targets. The two main downsides to this weapon is that it can overheat, and it is rather ammo heavy. However, this is compensated for by the gunslinger core trait for increased ammo reserves, as well as the posse up perk, which will grant an extra 30% ammo from pickups. To address the overheating factor, I employ the Ingenuity Mutator. When upgraded high enough, this dramatically reduces the rate of heat accumulation, and when maximized, increases reload speed commensurately to the level of heat accumulation. As for the mod, I enjoy using the Concussive Blast. Its use is mainly reserved for enemies that have gotten too close for comfort, or for groups of enemies that would outlast one's array of bullets. Upon execution, most enemies, including elites, will be immediately pushed away, and provide the necessary space to return to regular fire without the need for gross evasion. Elites may require additional blasts for the stumbling impact to take effect. As for the secondary, I enjoy using the Silverback model due to its stopping power for most basic foes. Typically, the fire rate on this pistol is also slow, but the gunslinger enhances this weapon to fire much faster. My preferred mutator is Bottom Feeder, which increases damage by 5% for every 20% of reserve ammo missing. When fully upgraded, it gains infinite ammo for 5 seconds and has a 60-second cooldown. Given the ammo expensive nature of the gunslinger, I would consider this mutator to be rather appropriate. Even if running low on ammo, its efficacy increases. As a potential alternative, I would go with Spirit Healer for a boost in health depending on mod expenditure, or Harmonizer for an increase to mod damage. Ideally, these mutators would be maximized to increase their efficacy with this particular build. My preferred mod choice comes down to either Scrapshot, or Tremor for slowing the advancement of foes. Scrapshot is not as damaging, but slows both weak and tough enemies. Tremor applies far more damage, but does not seem to stop elites. Due to the damage applied and its impact, I favor Tremor over Scrapshot, especially while taking on elites. Nothing is more annoying than trying to focus fire on an elite while basic foes disrupt the momentum. Tremor has enough impact to stumble enemies with its radius, and will provide extra time to apply damage to a key target, but both I would say are similarly effective. The melee weapon really comes down to preference with this pairing. I would not consider the Peacemaker to be oriented to melee damage at all, unless as a last resort. However, I prefer to use the Labyrinth Staff for a boost in mod power with either Shielded Strike or Transference Mutator for a slight bump in ammo reserves. So with the primary and secondary weapon in mind, where the Peacemaker may lack in debilitating damage, it makes up for with decent damaging weapons and being able to fire them at a much faster rate than other archetypes. The main reason I don't choose other slower hitting weapons like the Huntmaster M1 is due to its ammo and the amount of stress placed on eliminating each target. The damage in this Onion's opinion is simply not worth the effort. But anyway, with the weapons out of the way, we'll transition to the Amulet and Rings. So this is where some synergy will take place and allow more of the medic side to shine in optimizing this pairing. This may be a common choice, but for our amulet I choose to go with the Ankh of Power. This amulet grants a 15% increase to all damage, and upon using a relic, the damage bonus is doubled for 15 seconds. The main idea behind this choice is to give offense an extra bump and make enemy elimination just a bit easier, but we will refer back to this amulet later on in the discussion. As for our rings, I choose to employ Burden of the Warlock, Black Cat Band, Hardened Coil, and Encrypted Ring. Burden of the Warlock reduces mod power requirement by 15%, but will also cost 15% of health as Grey Health. Black Cat Band saves one from fatal damage and reverts the wearer's health to 1 unit. Movement speed will increase by 25% for 10 seconds. After about 1 second into this ring's activation, one will have to cease all incoming damage, lest they die. This ring also comes with a 2-minute cooldown. The main idea behind this ring is of course accident forgiveness, but due to the lack of meaningful defenses with this pairing, it's difficult to gauge when damage will be fatal. It's easy to go from full health to 1/3 or less with some basic enemies. Black Cat Band allows a small amount of time to recover and respond. Hardened Coil grants 3% damage reduction for every 10% of health missing and maximizes at 15%. This is a small amount of defense, similar to the Whispering Marble but a little less effective. This one is also for the purpose of accident forgiveness, but may prevent the immediate use of Black Cat Band. Last, the Encrypted Ring regenerates 20% of max health over 10 seconds upon using a mod. This can stack up to 30 seconds. Now the Ankh of Power, Burden of the Warlock, and the Encrypted Ring are all intended to work for and in conjunction with the Medic Prime perk. Using a mod will deplete some health, but the Encrypted Ring will regenerate this quickly. Regenerated health will count toward the Prime perk of the Medic, which will in turn grant more relic charges. As an added byproduct, if one so chooses, they may consume a relic for the triple purpose of healing, increasing damage, and reloading the current weapon due to the Gunslinger perk, Sleight of Hand, which will also grant an additional 15% range damage increase. Since I choose to employ the Bone Saw, reloading this weapon is taxing on time. Relic use will make this seamless. Plus, with Ingenuity, if not using a relic to skip the reload animation altogether, reloading this weapon could be seamless if maxed out. Now 15 health units regenerated is not much. This cycle of mod power, to health, to relics, to damage output, and back to mod power generation cannot be abused. Though logically speaking, if one is only regenerating health from their mods, they're probably doing something exceptionally well to avoid taking enemy damage altogether. But leaving that logic aside, we aren't finished with the build just yet. Next, we'll move on to the skill pairings. There really is only one set of skills I use for this pairing, and it plays directly into and extends the cycle previously outlined. Given our use and reasoning behind the Black Cat Band and the Hardened Coil, I prefer to employ the Healing Shield for the medic side. Although it only heals 30% of one's health, the user is granted a shield for 100% of their health immediately, and this skill does not have a delay that requires one to be stationary. The Gunslinger is made for high-velocity combat, based on their perks and skills. Healing while in the middle of combat seems appropriate. Any other arrangement would be like a squander, in this Onion's opinion. This skill could, again, be used either as a response to the activation of Black Cat Band, or used as a proactive measure to avoid its activation. As for the Gunslinger, I employ Bullet Storm. This skill increases fire rate by 20% and reload speed by 50%. Single-shot weapons also become automatic, and given that we're using the Silverback as our secondary, this only makes the weapon far more threatening. Any enemies eliminated while this skill is active will immediately reload the current weapon. Eliminating an enemy with a mod will also have the same effect. This is another way one can heal while remaining active in combat. Now in common zones, this cycle may not have to be used as quickly. Conversely, while in high enemy volume circumstances, the skill pairing, rings, amulet, and mods can be put into high gear, and theoretically allow one to take on crowds nigh infinitum. Our mod choices are inexpensive and can be activated frequently. They are also designed to prevent enemies from getting close and curtail their movement. It is paramount, of course, that one keeps their ammo topped off and have a means of generating mod power. This will transition us to relics and traits. The relic I favor to aid this pairing and the outlined strategy is the Ruined Heart. With Triage, this relic heals 5.8 health units per second and provides 500 mod power for each weapon over the course of 10 seconds. The shards I favor are skill cooldown, armor effectiveness, and ammo pickups. Moving on to the traits, to help this build work, I maximize Vigor, Endurance, Spirit, Expertise, Amplitude, Bark Skin, Shade Skin, Handling, and Footwork. I didn't really speak on armor, but just like our previous video, I would highly recommend remaining in the medium encumbrance bracket while maximizing armor as much as one can. The Gunslinger will likely need maneuverability more than other classes. They are like the infighter of ranged combat, and they come with an unrelenting sting. Just like our previous video, I would consider it helpful to have cures for all types of blight ready, as either a quick slot or in one's inventory. However, I will add that having a series of ammo boxes may likely be wise, so as to avoid the Gunslinger getting caught with their pants down. The Relic Shard, if high enough, should deter this from happening, but better to be safe than sorry. As an honorable mention, a viewer in our previous discussion, Rogue Uwu, suggested either Bark Extract or Root Water to aid with armor or health regeneration respectively. Consuming these concoctions may even negate the need for Hardened Coil or Black Cat Band and open this build to alternative rings. I personally view concoctions as bonuses as opposed to a necessary constituent of a given build, but these two can directly compensate or synergize with the medic and any other sub-archetype. Otherwise, that concludes our build for today. There are still 2 more sub-archetype pairings I enjoy using with the medic, so stay tuned for their exposition. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.